On a cold city morning, a homeless veteran sat quietly outside a grocery store, holding a bag of food given by a kind old woman. Moments later, police slammed him against a wall, shouting accusations. He said nothing, even as they mocked his ID. What no one realized was that the man they were arresting had once saved 5 soldiers from a burning Humvee. And when the police chief arrived at station and interrogation started, everyone was shocked who actually he was. What happened next stunned the entire city. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The morning was cold, the sidewalk wet with last night's rain. A gray-bearded man sat quietly outside the corner grocery, clutching a paper bag and minding his own breath. His coat was torn at the sleeves, his shoes soft at the soles. From across the street, red and blue lights blinked toward him. Cruiser rolled to a halt. 2 officers stepped out fast. Up, now! The older man stood slowly, stiff in his joints, not in defiance but in pain. What's in the bag? One barked. Who gave this to you? He tried to speak, but the words stuck like frost. A nearby woman whispered, I gave it to him. They ignored her. The patrolman shoved his hands into the man's coat, yanked out a wallet, flipped it open. A military ID, faded and frayed. The officer scoffed. This thing's older than me. The man looked away, but didn't look ashamed. Just hours earlier, before the sirens, before the shouting, Thomas Briggs had been inside the same corner store, quietly lifting a heavy box of canned goods for the elderly clerk, whose hands shook too much to stack them. He hadn't said much, just nodded, smiled once, and walked out with a bag the woman insisted he take. Outside, he tied his coat tighter and headed back toward the edge of town, where a rusted white van sat beneath a crumbling overpass. The side door creaked when he slid it open. Inside, neat as it could be, lay a folded blanket, a thermos, and a photograph taped to the ceiling. 4 young soldiers in dusty fatigues, arms slung around each other, alive and grinning. He didn't carry a phone. Didn't ask for change. Didn't want the VA's help. Too many questions. Too many memories. Beneath the floorboard, tucked in a metal box, sat the parts of his story no one saw. A folded flag, 3 medals dulled by time, and a small laminated newspaper clipping. Local sergeant saves 5 in ambush. Missing in action. Tommy had stopped talking about that day long ago. The day the convoy was hit. The day only he came back, so now he lived with silence. It never judged, never stared. To most, he was just another old man in a dirty coat, forgotten. But the truth sat just inches beneath his feet, enough courage to fill a monument. Sealed in a box no one bothered to open. Back on the sidewalk, the air had turned colder. Not from the weather, but from the looks. The patrolman's voice grew louder, sharper, as if raising it would justify his actions. You can't sit here, he snapped, circling the old man like a threat. You think just because you've got a few wrinkles you get a free pass? Tommy stood still, eyes low, his body tense with quiet endurance. The grocery bag had been knocked from his hands, its contents, bread, a can of soup, rolling toward the curb. Hey, the shopkeeper stepped out. That man didn't steal anything. I gave it to him. He helps me every week. Step back, ma'am, the second officer warned, raising a hand. We got this. He reached into Tommy's coat and yanked the wallet again, flipping open the worn military ID. A scoff. You expect us to believe this crusty thing? Anybody can fake one of these online. Tommy didn't flinch, didn't defend himself. Just waited. That seemed to irritate them more. The cuffs came out, cold metal clamped around his wrists with no gentleness. He winced but still said nothing. One officer muttered under his breath, probably faked the whole thing. These guys always got some war story. A teenager nearby caught the moment on video. Another woman gasped, Is that a Medal of Honor ribbon? Phones came up. The crowd was growing. The shopkeeper's voice shook now. Please stop. He's a good man. He served. But the patrolman's pride had already planted its flag. He's trespassing. You don't get a medal for loitering. He can explain himself at the precinct. They shoved him toward the cruiser. He stumbled slightly, the bag of groceries forgotten behind him. The onlookers didn't speak, but their eyes said enough. Shock, confusion, anger. And Tommy? He simply looked up at the gray sky, as if asking it how many more times a man could be unseen before disappearing completely. They shoved him into the back seat. The cruiser door slammed shut, and just like that, the world moved on. At the precinct, the rhythm was routine. Phones ringing, reports stacking, no one expecting the shift to veer from ordinary. The old man sat quietly in the holding bench, hands resting limp in his lap, his silence louder than any outburst. In the back, Rookie Officer Alvarez unpacked the evidence tray without much thought. Wallet, dog tags, a bent photo of men in uniform, then the box and scuffed metal, edges dulled by time. She opened it absently, then froze. Inside a bronze star, and tucked beneath it a blue velvet case with gold-embossed letters nearly worn away. Congressional Medal of Honor. She blinked, looked again, lifted the lid. The metal inside didn't shimmer. It commanded. She whispered, "Lieutenant, you need to see this." Moments later, the shift commander appeared, skeptical at first, but the color drained from his face the instant he saw the medal. "Call the chief," he said. Down the hall, Chief Harland, 30 years in the force, leaned over his desk when the word Medal of Honor rang through the room. He stood fast, chair screeching behind him. "Who said that?" When the evidence file hit his hands, he didn't breathe. Name Briggs, Thomas E.A., younger photo clipped to the sheet, stared back at him. Hard eyes, uniform dusted with sand. Harlan knew that name, knew that story. He was the one who dragged 5 men out of that Humvee, he whispered. Was presumed KI in 04. He didn't wait for protocol, didn't ask for clearance. He was already heading toward the holding cells, heart pounding with the weight of a name the world had forgotten, but one he never had. The holding cell was quiet, save for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the slow ticking of a wall clock that seemed louder than usual. Thomas Briggs sat on a steel bench, wrists still bound, skin red and raw beneath the cuffs. He didn't complain, didn't ask for water. His shoulders slumped forward in a posture of long endurance, the kind only years of silence could teach. Then came the sound of boots, heavy, purposeful, fast. The door burst open. Chief Harland entered in full uniform, breath tight, eyes wide with recognition. He stopped just inside the room. Every officer within sight turned. The chief stepped forward, stood at attention, and saluted. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you." The words hit like a thunderclap. The old man blinked, confused. "You don't need to salute me," he murmured, as if embarrassed by the gesture. But Harlan's voice cracked, thick with something deeper than protocol. "Yes, I do. You're Thomas Briggs, Sergeant Thomas Briggs. I read about you in Ranger School. You saved 5 men in an ambush outside Fallujah. You carried them through fire." The officer who had cuffed him stood frozen near the wall, his mouth open but no words coming out. The chief didn't look at him. "Get those cuffs off him now." The younger officer hesitated. "Chief, Now, Keys fumbled. The cuffs came off." Briggs flexed his hands, wincing slightly. "I didn't want this," he said softly. "Didn't come here to stir anything up." "You didn't," Harlan said. "We did. We forgot." One by one, officers began appearing in the doorway. Some saluted. Others just stood there, stunned. The room shifted. Respect returned like a wave that had taken too long to come back in. Outside, the video had already started to spread. The shove, the arrest, the medal, the name. People gathered at the station steps, murmuring, holding signs they hadn't had time to make. Thomas Briggs looked through the glass at the crowd. He had spent years invisible, but now, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Someone finally saw him. They offered him a podium, but Thomas Briggs waved it away. "I don't need speeches," he said with a faint smile. "Just let me stand." The small press conference was held on the precinct steps that afternoon, under a sky still painted with the chill of morning. Officers stood shoulder to shoulder, the chief front and center, his voice steady as he spoke. "We failed to recognize what stood before us. Not just a soldier, but a man of honor, humility, and sacrifice." When Briggs stepped forward, the silence was total. Then, without cue, the entire department rose in a standing salute. No fanfare, just respect. In the front row, the store clerk dabbed her eyes. "Told them you were good," she whispered. A young cadet, barely out of the academy, walked up nervously. "Sir, may I shake your hand?" Briggs nodded, extended it gently. Then came the patrolman, the same one who had slammed him against the cruiser just hours earlier. He walked slow, eyes lowered, the weight of shame in every step. I'm sorry. I didn't see you." Briggs looked him in the eye, steady and kind. "Learn from it," he said. "Respect doesn't always wear medals on the outside." That night, the precinct arranged a room at a local apartment complex, clean and warm. They stocked the fridge. The VA called with fresh paperwork and a new case manager. Briggs sat on the bed, the metal box resting beside him. For the first time in years, he opened it without hesitation. He pulled out the medals one by one and placed them on the shelf above the window. Not for the world, not for applause, but for something simpler. The screen fades to quiet. The chief's voice echoes gently. Not from a stage, but from memory. Respect isn't about what you see. It's what you don't know yet. Every life has a story. Some are written in courage. A black and white photo fills the frame. 6 young soldiers shoulder to shoulder, dust on their uniforms, light in their eyes. Thomas Briggs stands in the middle, arms around the brothers he once carried through fire. Then, the present. Briggs walking down the same street where it all began. Not slouched or hiding, but steady. An older man in a clean jacket. A bag of groceries in hand. A teenager holds the door open for him. A city worker nods. A man across the street raises 2 fingers in quiet salute. No medals on display. No speeches needed. Just the small, sacred return of dignity. Because sometimes the ones we overlook carried the weight of a nation on their back. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs the reminder. Honor their silence. See who they really are.